Ethan Cole had spent most of his adult life walking into boardrooms with the confidence of a man who had built an empire from nothing. But on nights like this, he did not feel like a billionaire or a single father trying his best, or even a man who understood his own heart. He felt like someone who had lost something he would never get back. The neon sign of the Harbor Point Diner flickered against the mist rising over the Baltimore docks as he pushed open the glass door and stepped inside. A soft bell chimed, and the familiar scent of coffee and frying onions wrapped around him like a tired embrace. It was almost midnight, and the diner was nearly empty except for a trucker dozing in a booth near the window, and a man who had clearly stayed too long nursing a lukewarm cup of coffee. But Ethan was not looking for company. He was looking for the quiet anonymity this place always gave him. Here, no one cared about his money or his reputation or the articles written about him after his messy divorce. Here, he could pretend he was ordinary, and tonight he needed that more than anything. He slid into his usual booth and rested his hands on the chipped formica table. His reflection wavered in the window beside him, a face that looked older than his 38 years and more exhausted than a man who owned a successful green logistics company should ever look. But exhaustion was the cost of carrying secrets, and lately his secret was becoming heavier by the day. He closed his eyes and exhaled slowly. This was supposed to be simple. Test the person. See how they react to a man who appears to have very little. Protect himself from being used again. But every time he ran one of his little tests on a new blind date, he felt less victory and more emptiness. Truth be told, he was beginning to hate the person he became while doing it. A soft voice cut through his thoughts. "You back again, mister?" He opened his eyes. Maya Brooks stood beside his booth holding a pot of coffee. Her brown hair was tied back loosely with a few strands falling around her face. Her apron was smudged from a long shift, but her eyes were bright alert and entirely too kind for someone who worked 2 jobs. Ethan felt something in his chest shift the way it always did when Maya spoke to him. She was the only reason he kept coming here, even if he pretended otherwise. "Yeah," he said, offering a tired smile. "Long day." She poured coffee into his mug without asking. She always remembered he took it black. They rarely talked beyond that. He liked that she did not pry or flirt or hover the way people sometimes did when they sensed money. She treated him like anyone else, and that alone had become dangerous. Tonight, though, something felt different. The man at the counter, the one who had been sipping coffee for too long, raised his voice slightly. Nothing aggressive, nothing alarming, just the foggy stubbornness of someone who had had a drink earlier in the evening. "Maya. I asked for more sugar, not the fake stuff." His tone held irritation but no true threat. Maya set the coffee pot down and walked over calmly. "Sorry, sir, we ran out of packets. I can bring you some from the back if you give me a moment." Ethan watched her with quiet admiration. She did not lose her patience. She did not match irritation with irritation. She simply handled it. Life had clearly not been gentle with her, but she remained gentle with the world. When she returned, she apologized again to the customer who muttered something under his breath, but let it go. Then she came back to Ethan as if the moment had never happened. "Sorry about that," she said. "People get cranky when they are tired." He took a sip of coffee. "You handled it well." She shrugged. "You learn to stay calm, or you do not survive night shifts." Her joke was light, but something underneath it was heavy enough to make Ethan want to ask more. But he did not ask. He never asked. Asking meant caring, and caring meant risk. Maya checked the time on the wall clock, then looked back at him. "You eating tonight, or just coffee?" He hesitated. Here it was. The moment he had repeated on dozens of dates. The harmless little test that let him glimpse who a person really was. Except Maya was not a date. She was someone he genuinely liked. Someone he respected. Someone who made him feel almost human again. But even so, the habit slipped out. "Actually, could I get the check for the coffee? I think I might have left my wallet at home." Maya blinked, surprised for only a second. "Oh, that is okay. Happens to everyone sometimes." She reached into her apron without hesitation. "I got it. It is just coffee." He froze. Every other woman he had tested had reacted with frustration or suspicion or sudden excuses to leave, but Maya did not even flinch. She simply paid the small bill with her tip money as if it were the most natural thing in the world. And for the first time, the test did not feel like protection. It felt like betrayal. "Are you sure?" he asked quietly, the guilt already creeping into his voice. She smiled. "It is late. You look like you need the coffee more than I do. Pay me back next time." Next time. The words hit him harder than they should have. She trusted there would be a next time. She trusted him, and he had just lied to her, again. He watched her walk away to clean a table near the window, and the guilt grew heavier. Something was changing inside him. Something he had not felt in years. The test was supposed to make him feel safe, but now he felt like he had just made the worst mistake of his life. Because if Maya was genuine, if she was the one person who might have cared about him without knowing who he really was, then every lie he told tonight was a crack waiting to shatter. And for the first time, Ethan Cole was afraid not of being used, but of losing someone before he even had the chance to know her. He sat in the dim light of the diner, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, the scrape of plates, and Maya's soft voice as she spoke to the man at the counter. And he realized with cold clarity that his life was about to change. Not because of the test, but because of the woman who had unknowingly passed it. He pressed his palms against the table and whispered to himself, "This is going to hurt." Maya Brooks had never planned for her life to look like this, juggling 2 jobs, a mountain of responsibilities, and the constant pressure of being the only adult holding her family together, but life rarely asked for permission before it unraveled itself. The morning after Ethan left the diner, she stood at the bus stop with her jacket pulled tightly around her, the cold Baltimore wind stinging her cheeks as she waited for the first route that would take her across town to the small apartment she shared with her 17-year-old sister, Nina. The city was barely awake, trash trucks rumbling down the narrow streets, seagulls circling over the harbor searching for scraps, and Maya felt that familiar ache of exhaustion settle into her bones. She had worked the late shift again and slept barely 3 hours before waking Nina up for school, packing the girl a lunch and reminding her gently to stay away from the group of kids who had been dragging her into trouble lately. But none of that compared to the weight she carried deep inside her chest, the constant worry that never left her alone. Medical bills. Stacks of them. Envelopes with red print. Phone calls she ignored because she already knew what they wanted. Their mother had died unexpectedly 2 years ago, long enough for the grief to scab, but not long enough for the wounds to fully close. Their father had left years earlier. Maya had become parent, sister, guardian, nurse, provider, all in one breath. And though she never let Nina see it some nights, she cried quietly in the bathroom, not because she was weak, but because she was so tired of being strong. When she reached their apartment, Nina was already on the couch tying her shoes. Her hair was messy, but her eyes bright. "You look dead tired, Maya," she said, stretching her legs. "You okay?" Maya forced a smile. "I am always okay." Nina crossed her arms. "You do not have to pretend with me." Maya did not answer because if she started talking, she might not stop. Instead, she handed her sister the bagged lunch. "Do not skip breakfast this time, and no soda till after school." Nina groaned dramatically but took the bag. "You sound like Mom." "Someone has to," Maya said softly, brushing a stray curl behind Nina's ear. After Nina left for school, Maya sank onto the couch for a moment, allowing herself to breathe. She thought about the man from the diner, the quiet one with the tired eyes and the kind of sadness people tried to hide. She had noticed him long before he ever noticed her. The way he stared at his coffee like it held answers. The way he looked relieved whenever she spoke to him. She did not know why he looked so lost, but she recognized that look because she saw it every morning in her own mirror. She shook herself out of her thoughts, grabbed her bag, and hurried to her second job at a local grocery store where she worked the early shift stocking shelves before the store opened. The pay was barely enough to cover rent and utilities, but she needed every dollar. As she stocked the cereal aisle, her mind wandered back to the previous night. When Ethan's card supposedly declined, she had not even hesitated before paying for his coffee. It was nothing compared to the bills she kept hidden in a drawer, And as far as she could tell, he was a decent man with decent manners, and she was not the type of person who let someone walk away embarrassed if she could help it. People made mistakes. Cards failed. Life was messy. What mattered was how you treated others when things got awkward. But even as she convinced herself of that, she could not ignore the small, curious spark inside her. Who was he exactly? He carried himself like someone who used to have more than he did now. There was a calm in his posture, the kind of calm that did not come from fear of falling, but from having stood somewhere higher before. She shook the thought away as she pushed her cart to the back storage room. She did not get to wonder about strangers. Wondering meant feeling something, and feeling something meant disappointment when reality crashed back down. After her grocery shift ended, she checked her phone and saw 2 missed calls from a medical billing service. She ignored them again, her chest tightening. She breathed in slowly and reminded herself she would figure it out the way she always did. One step, one shift, one day at a time. Later that evening, she returned to the diner for her second job. The sky was turning purple over the harbor, and she tied her apron around her waist, already mentally preparing for the long night. She had just picked up the order pad when the door opened and Ethan walked in. Maya blinked, surprised to see him again so soon. The diner was not exactly a place most customers returned to night after night unless they had nowhere else to go. Yet here he was moving toward his usual booth with that same quiet heaviness in his shoulders. She walked over with a fresh pot of coffee. Twice in one day, she teased lightly. "Should I be worried about you or about the coffee addiction?" Ethan smiled, but it did not quite reach his eyes. "Rough day." Again, Maya glanced at the clock. "You want your usual?" He nodded, and she began pouring. She could feel him watching her, not in a way that made her uncomfortable, but in a way that felt like he was trying to figure something out. She set the mug down gently. "You look like someone carrying a lot on your back," she said before she could stop herself. His breath caught for half a second. "You do not even know me." "True," she said, but tired recognizes tired. Something flickered in his expression, a brief glimmer of vulnerability. It made her chest tighten unexpectedly. "So, how is your sister?" Ethan asked quietly, surprising her. Maya blinked. "You remembered. She is okay. High school is rough, but she manages." Maya wanted to say more, wanted to tell him about the bills, the late notices, the fear, but she swallowed the words because he was still a stranger, and strangers did not get to see the weak parts. The door chimed again, and a couple entered, giving her a reason to step away. As she walked back to the counter, she realized she had not guarded herself the way she usually did. Something about him disarmed her, and she did not like it. Caring was dangerous. Caring made you vulnerable. Still, as she glanced over and saw him staring into his coffee as though he were afraid of what would happen if he looked up, Maya wondered, for the first time in a long time, if she was not the only one carrying a storm inside her. Ethan Cole had always been a man who thrived on control, on knowing every variable before making a decision, on keeping his emotions tucked neatly behind the armor he had built after the divorce shattered the last remaining pieces of trust he thought he had. Yet, as he sat in the dim corner of the diner the following evening watching Maya carry a tray of plates with the ease of someone who had spent years perfecting the art of surviving things harder than late-night shifts, he felt something that scared him more than the thought of being alone. He felt comfortable, too comfortable, and that comfort was exactly what made this lie so dangerous. He had returned to the diner again, not out of habit, but because he wanted to see her, hear her voice, watch the way she smiled at strangers without expecting anything in return. It made him feel like he could be someone different, someone lighter, someone who did not carry the weight of a failed marriage, a messy past, and a heart filled with distrust. For the first time since the divorce, he wanted to be known again, but only by someone who did not already know the billionaire version of him. Maya noticed him as soon as he walked in. She approached his booth with a tired but genuine smile that warmed him in places he did not realize had gone cold. "Back again," she said, teasing gently. "Should I be flattered or worried?" Ethan lifted his coffee mug in a small salute, maybe a little of both. Her laugh was soft and short, but real, the kind of laugh that came from a place that had not been given many reasons to laugh lately. She took his order, a cheap sandwich and a refill of black coffee, and walked away. And as he watched her, something quiet but powerful tugged inside him. He was supposed to be testing her just like he tested every other woman he met. But now the thought made him feel ashamed. The test had been a shield once a way to protect himself from being used again, but with Maya, the shield felt like a wall he was trapping himself behind. Still, he did not break the lie. He could not yet. After an hour, when her shift slowed, Maya slid into the booth across from him to take a brief break. "You are always here alone, Ethan," she said, studying his face as though trying to decipher the story behind the lines near his eyes. "Do you ever get tired of eating dinner with your thoughts?" Ethan hesitated. The truth hovered on his tongue, heavy and vulnerable. "I have my son," he said instead. She blinked, surprised. "You have a kid?" He nodded. 8 years old. Smart. Worries too much. Maya leaned forward, slightly interested. "Does he live with you full-time?" Ethan answered quietly. "His mother is not in the picture." A shadow crossed his eyes, but he kept his voice steady. "It has been just the two of us for a while now." Maya softened. "That is a lot for one person." He shrugged. "You do what you have to do." She understood that better than anyone. It was written all over the way she moved, the way she handled endless responsibilities without ever complaining. She looked at him again, eyes searching for something she could not quite name. "So, what do you do for work?" The question he feared. The question that could shatter everything. He took a breath and let the lie slip out with practiced ease. "I do delivery work. Sometimes warehouse shifts. Nothing fancy." Her brows lifted, but she did not judge. She just nodded like she understood the quiet exhaustion of low-wage labor. Must be hard providing for a kid on that kind of income. Ethan felt his throat tighten. He forced a shrug. "We manage." The lie felt darker tonight, heavier, because she believed him, because she respected him for it, and because he did nothing to earn that respect. Maya reached for her cup of tea, blowing on it softly before taking a sip. "Something about you does not fit," she murmured, more to herself than to him. He stiffened. "What do you mean?" She shook her head. "No, nothing bad. You just carry yourself like someone who has seen a lot, someone who has lost a lot." He exhaled slowly, relief mixing with guilt. The truth, she sensed, had nothing to do with money, and everything to do with the pieces of himself he had tried to hide, even from his own son. When his phone buzzed, he glanced down and saw a message from the nanny. "Lucas wants to know when you are coming home." Ethan felt his chest warm. "Tell him soon," he typed back. Then he slipped his phone out of sight before Maya could notice the polished edges and sleek model that did not fit the life he claimed to live. Maya checked the clock and stood up again. "Break is over. Try to get some sleep tonight, Ethan. You look like you are running on fumes." He watched her walk away, her steps steady despite exhaustion. Something in him cracked a little deeper. On his way out of the diner, 2 hours later, he found himself imagining a different life, one where he met her without lies, where he introduced her to Lucas without fear, where she knew the truth and still chose him. But that felt like a fantasy he did not deserve. When he got home, Lucas was waiting on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, half asleep, but refusing to go to bed until Ethan returned. "Dad, did you work late again?" the boy asked, rubbing his eyes. Ethan lifted him gently. "Something like that." Lucas studied his face with the seriousness only a child could have. "Did you lie to someone today?" Ethan froze. Kids saw everything. Kids sensed everything. "Why would you ask that?" he whispered. Lucas shrugged. "Because when grown-ups lie, they look like they are carrying something heavy, and you look heavy all the time lately." Ethan closed his eyes, stung by the honesty only a child could give without meaning to wound. He tucked Lucas into bed and sat beside him until the boy drifted off, then walked to the living room where the city lights flickered through the window. He knew he should stop going to the diner, stop lying to Maya, stop pretending to be someone he was not. But something about her made him feel alive again. Something about her made the lie feel too easy. And that was the most dangerous feeling of all. The afternoon sun hung low over Baltimore as Ethan walked with Lucas through the narrow streets near the harbor, trying to make their weekend feel normal. even though his mind kept drifting back to the diner and the woman whose presence had begun to settle beneath his skin. Lucas held onto his hand tightly while licking a melting vanilla ice cream cone, his small legs struggling to keep up as they headed toward the boardwalk. "Dad, can we feed the ducks later?" the boy asked between licks. "Sure," Ethan replied, his voice warm despite the weight he carried. "Anything you want." Lucas nodded, satisfied, though his eyes kept drifting upward to study his father's expression. Ethan tried to smile more often now, sensing how much his son needed it. He was still learning how to be two people at once, the father who was present and steady, and the man unraveling quietly on the inside. They passed a small coffee stand where the air smelled of roasted beans and cinnamon. Lucas tugged on his sleeve when he spotted a homeless man sitting against a brick wall holding a cardboard sign that read, "Just trying to make it through today." The man's coat was torn and his shoes barely held together with frayed laces. Ethan felt his heart tighten. This city had thousands of stories like this one's that reminded him how small his problems were compared to the weight some carried. Lucas slowed his pace. "Dad," he whispered. "Can we give him something?" Ethan crouched down to meet his son's eyes. "What do you want to give him?" "Whatever we can." The boy's voice was honest, steady, with the unfiltered compassion only children possessed. Ethan pulled out a few dollars and placed them in Lucas's hand, letting him deliver it himself. The man's eyes softened with gratitude and Lucas beamed with pride. Ethan ruffled his son's hair. "You did good, kiddo. You should be proud." Lucas shrugged, smiling shyly. "Moms used to say people need kindness even if they do not ask for it." Ethan swallowed hard, feeling the familiar sting in his chest. He carried that grief quietly, not wanting it to spill into Lucas's world more than it already had. They continued walking until they reached the diner. Lucas lifted his chin curiously. "Are we here for food, or because of the lady who works here?" Ethan hesitated. "Maybe both." Lucas nodded knowingly in a way that made Ethan wonder if children were born understanding more about love than adults ever managed to. Inside the diner, Maya was wiping down a booth when she noticed them. Her entire face brightened when she saw Lucas, a reaction so sincere and immediate that Ethan felt something warm unfurl inside him. "Well, look who we have here," she said, kneeling slightly to be eye level with Lucas. "The coolest kid in Baltimore." Lucas grinned proudly. "I am not that cool." "Sure you are," she said. "You want chocolate milk?" He nodded eagerly. Maya glanced at Ethan briefly before heading behind the counter. Ethan sat with Lucas in their usual booth, watching Maya pour a glass of milk with an ease and gentleness he rarely saw in people. She did not rush, she did not force a smile, she just moved with quiet grace. When she returned, Lucas accepted the milk with both hands. "Thank you, Maya." For some reason, hearing her name in his son's soft voice made Ethan's heart twist. Maya turned to Ethan. "Back again, I see." He shrugged. "Figured we could use a walk." Lucas chimed in bluntly. "Dad likes your coffee." Ethan shot him a look, but Maya laughed softly. "I am honored." She rested her hands on the back of the booth for a moment. "Busy day?" she asked. "Always," Ethan answered. "Work never really slows down." Maya's expression shifted into something thoughtful. She looked tired but not defeated. "You know," she said, "sometimes being tired is just proof you are still trying." Something in her words struck him with surprising force. She understood effort in a way that was raw and unpretentious. The bell over the diner door jingled and Maya excused herself to take an order. Ethan watched her lean gently toward a customer, listening intently as though their small request mattered. She moved through the diner with a rhythm shaped by routine hardship and resilience. And while she was busy, a teenage boy entered the diner carrying a plastic bag of groceries. His clothes were worn but clean, and he walked with a purposeful stride straight toward a table near the back. When he saw the homeless man from earlier now sitting with a cup of soup Maya had given him, he approached, quietly placed an apple on the table and said, "I had extra. Wanted to share." The homeless man blinked, surprised. "Thank you, son." The boy shrugged and walked out. Ethan felt something stir in him. Kindness. The real kind. The kind that did not perform for attention. The kind he had not seen in a long time. Maya returned to the booth wiping her hands on her apron. "Sorry about that. Saturdays are always a little wild." Lucas leaned forward. "Maya, we saw a man outside and he was cold and hungry, so we helped." "That is wonderful," she said warmly. "Your dad is raising a good kid." Ethan felt his cheeks warm unexpectedly. Maya's eyes lingered on him a moment too long. Then she straightened. "Actually, I need to grab something from the back. I will be right back." When she left, Lucas climbed onto the seat on his knees. "Dad, do you like her, Lucas?" Ethan whispered. "I think she is nice. And you smile when she talks to you." Kids had a way of breaking walls without trying. Ethan looked toward the counter where Maya reappeared holding a small brown bag. "Here," she said, handing it to Lucas. "On the house, mac and cheese. My sister made too much today." Lucas accepted it with wide, grateful eyes. "Thank you, Maya. That is so nice." Ethan felt a tightening in his throat. He knew enough about people to recognize how much it meant for Maya to share anything extra from her home. Kindness like hers was not casual. It came from sacrifice. When they left the diner, the sky had turned a deep purple and a cool breeze swept across the harbor. Lucas walked ahead humming to himself while swinging the brown bag from side to side. Maya watched them leave through the glass door, a soft expression settling over her features. And as Ethan lifted his hand slightly in a wave, she smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. And it was in that moment, as he walked away with his son by his side, that Ethan felt something he had forgotten he could feel: hope. Quiet, simple, dangerous hope. Because kindness could change a person's life. And that night he realized Maya's kindness was already changing his. By the following week, Ethan was slipping into routines he did not fully understand but could not seem to resist. He found himself timing his errands so he could pass by the diner. When Maya worked evenings, found himself pausing before he entered to make sure he looked like the man he was pretending to be, found himself listening for the familiar chime of the door, as though it anchored him more than the skyscrapers his company owned. It was terrifying how quickly she had become part of the quiet rhythm of his days. On Tuesday afternoon, he picked Lucas up from school, the boy running toward him with his backpack bouncing wildly. "Dad, we have a project, and I need help," he announced breathlessly. Ethan tightened his grip on the steering wheel. He wished he could be the father who had endless energy for school projects, who did not come home with work emails buzzing in his mind, who did not carry exhaustion like a permanent shadow. But he bent down to meet Lucas's gaze. "What is the project?" he asked gently. "A report on ecosystems," Lucas said proudly. "We get extra credit if we build a diorama." He paused. "Can Maya help too?" Ethan blinked. "Why would Maya help?" "Because she talks to me like I matter," Lucas said simply. "And she smiles with her whole face." Ethan felt something inside him pull taut. Children had truths adults spent years avoiding. He forced a calm breath. "We can ask her." They drove to the diner later that evening. The warm glow from inside spilled onto the sidewalk, and as soon as they entered, Maya looked up from the counter, her eyes lighting instantly at the sight of Lucas. "Well, hey there," she said, wiping her hands on her apron. "Did you grow an inch since yesterday?" Lucas grinned. "Maybe. I have a school project and Dad said maybe you can help." Maya glanced at Ethan for confirmation. He nodded awkwardly, feeling more exposed by that single nod than by any boardroom presentation he had ever given. "Sure," Maya said warmly. "I am on break in 10 minutes. Want to show me what you have so far?" They slid into a booth and Lucas eagerly pulled out papers from his backpack. Maya joined them, soon after leaning over Lucas's drawings with genuine interest. She pointed out details, asked questions, made suggestions without ever taking over. Ethan watched them in a silence that felt almost sacred. Lucas rarely let people in. Losing his mother had made him cautious, observant, reluctant to trust anyone outside the tiny circle of his world. But with Maya, he laughed freely, spoke without hesitation, leaned toward her as though he had known her far longer than a handful of diner visits. and Ethan felt it the gravitational pull. The way a child becoming attached made everything exponentially more dangerous, because this was no longer just about a lie he told a woman he was falling for. It was about the risk of letting his son care for her too. When Maya returned to her shift, Ethan watched her move around the diner with ease, a gentle smile resting on her lips as she delivered plates and refilled drinks. Lucas scribbled on his project beside him, humming quietly. "Dad," Lucas whispered suddenly. Ethan leaned down. "Yeah, buddy." Lucas looked toward Maya, then back at him. "You look at her the same way you used to look at Mom when you thought nobody saw." Ethan's breath caught. Lucas did not say it to hurt him. He said it because he saw more than Ethan wished he did. "I like her," Ethan admitted softly, "but liking someone and trusting someone are different things." Lucas nodded slowly, absorbing those words. Then he asked the question Ethan feared most. "Are you telling her the truth?" Ethan felt his chest tighten. "Not yet. Why not?" "Because sometimes grown-ups get scared." "Of what?" "Of losing something they are not ready to lose." Lucas stared at him the way only a child could, honest and unblinking. "Then maybe you have to stop being scared." Ethan looked away, unable to meet that gaze. Fear was a habit he had rehearsed for years. Fear of being used. Fear of being lied to. Fear of letting someone into the life he had spent so long fortifying. And yet, here he was building something fragile and real with a woman who had no idea who he really was. When they left the diner, Maya walked them out, stepping into the cool evening air. The harbor breeze tugged at her apron, and the streetlights illuminated the tired shadows beneath her eyes. "Let me know if you need more help with the project," she said to Lucas. "I had fun." Lucas grinned. "You are good at helping." Maya's smile softened. "Someone had to help me a lot growing up. I guess I am just returning the universe's favor." Then she turned to Ethan, her expression shifting into something gentler. "You look like a man carrying too much again." He swallowed. "Maybe I am." She studied him for a moment. "Do you ever tell anyone what is really going on in your life?" "Ethan." Hesitation flickered across his features. He almost told her, almost broke the lie, almost let the truth slip through the cracks. But fear wrapped around his heart again, and he shook his head. "Not really." Maya nodded, but something in her eyes dimmed. She sensed the wall he kept between them. Still, she offered a small smile. "Some walls do not keep people out. They keep you in." Then she patted Lucas's shoulder and went back inside. On the drive home, Lucas fell asleep in the back seat, his small hand still gripping the brown bag of leftover mac and cheese Maya had given him. Ethan glanced at him through the rearview mirror and felt a tightening in his chest. This was no longer something he could pretend was harmless. Maya was becoming part of Lucas's world, and that meant the lie had roots now. That night, after tucking Lucas into bed, Ethan stood in the doorway of his apartment staring at the city lights flickering outside like distant signals from a world he no longer understood. He thought about the way Maya had looked at him, about the warmth in her voice, about how easily she had stepped into a space he had not allowed anyone to enter since Lucas's mother died. He felt himself falling not with a rush, but with a slow inevitability, like stepping into water that rose inch by inch until he realized he was completely submerged. And for the first time in years, he admitted the truth silently to himself. It was not Maya he was scared of. It was the man he was becoming around her. A man who wanted to be honest. A man who wanted to deserve her. A man who could not hide behind a lie much longer. The next few days passed in a blur of work meetings and school drop-offs and late-night emails that piled onto Ethan's shoulders until he felt the familiar heaviness that came whenever life demanded more from him than he had the strength to give. Yet, even in the middle of that exhaustion, he kept finding his thoughts drifting back to Maya, to the way she spoke with quiet steadiness, to how she listened without judgment, to the warmth she showed Lucas without even trying. It unsettled him how much he needed that warmth, how much he looked forward to the next moment he would see her face under the diner's soft yellow lighting. On Friday night, he drove to the diner later than usual, the hour creeping close to closing time. Lucas was already asleep at home with the nanny, and Ethan had told himself he would stop by just to grab a coffee. Nothing more, nothing deeper. But when he stepped inside the diner, he immediately sensed something was wrong. Maya stood near the counter speaking calmly to a customer whose voice had risen to an irritated grumble. The man looked frustrated from a long day, not dangerous, but his tone carried the kind of sharpness that made the air shift slightly. Ethan paused at the doorway watching carefully without stepping in. Maya's posture stayed steady and respectful, her voice even and composed. "Sir, I understand you wanted the special," she said gently. "But the kitchen closed 20 minutes ago. I can get you something else or pack something to go." The customer sighed loudly, rubbing a hand over his face. He wasn't threatening, just worn down and agitated the way tired people sometimes became. Maya kept her tone calm and patient, guiding him toward another option until he finally relented with a grumble and slid back into the booth to wait. Ethan let out a slow breath. She had handled it without fear or tension, without escalating anything. She had a way of bringing peace to messy moments, and for a reason he could not name, he felt proud of her, protective of her, drawn to her even more. When she finally noticed him, she gave a small smile as she picked up a menu and walked over. "You are out late," she said, handing him the menu, though she already knew he always ordered the same thing. "I could say the same about you," Ethan replied, sliding into his usual booth. She sat the menu down and leaned a little against the table. "Double shift," she said lightly. The morning girl called out, "Happens more than you would think." He studied her face, noticing the faint purple shadows beneath her eyes. "You are exhausted, Maya." Her smile softened. "Exhausted is normal. I am fine." He wanted to tell her she did not have to live like that, but the words felt too heavy for the space between them. Instead, he said quietly, "You deserve rest." She looked at him a beat longer than expected, then turned as the order bell dinged from the kitchen. While she disappeared behind the counter, Ethan kept watching, not because she needed him, but because his own heart needed the reassurance that she was okay. When she returned with his coffee, she leaned her hip against the booth and asked, "How is Lucas?" "He is good." Ethan answered, his voice softer now. "He misses you." Maya blinked, surprised. "Misses me?" He shrugged. "You helped him with his project. Kids remember kindness." She looked down at the table briefly as if embarrassed by the compliment. "Well, he is a great kid, and you are doing a good job with him." Something in Ethan's chest tightened. Compliments rarely touched him, but somehow hers did. Suddenly, the diner door opened, and the same weary customer from earlier approached the counter asking for a napkin. As Maya stepped away, Ethan watched quietly, ready to intervene if needed, but giving her space because she had shown she could handle herself. She handed the man the napkin and exchanged a brief polite word before returning. "See," she said, "everything is fine." Ethan exhaled a slow tension leaving his shoulders. "I know, I just worry about what she asked. You." The word slipped out before he could stop it. Maya froze for a second, almost startled by the honesty in his voice. Then she recovered and looked away for a moment before returning her focus to him, her eyes gentler now. "You do not have to worry about me, Ethan. People deal with worse every day." He shook his head. "That does not mean you should have to." Her breath caught, but she masked it quickly. "You have your own weight to carry. Sometimes it feels like you are disappearing behind it." He felt stripped bare by her words, as though she saw the truth he thought he had hidden well. "I am trying," he murmured. She nodded. "Trying counts." For a moment, they simply stood there looking at each other in a silence that felt too intimate for two people who were still strangers in so many ways. Then, the soft ring of the doorbell broke the moment as a group of college students entered, laughing loudly. Maya excused herself and moved to take their order. Ethan watched her weave through the tables with practiced ease and an unspoken strength he admired deeply. He realized then that he did not just like Maya, he needed her, not to fill a void or fix a wound, but because she made him want to be better than the man he had become. As the night wore on, the diner grew quieter and Maya brought him a refill without asking. Ethan hesitated before speaking again. "Maya, Can I tell you something? She turned to him, curious. What is it? Ethan lowered his gaze to the swirling surface of his coffee. Sometimes I feel like I am losing parts of myself, like I am trying to hold everything together and it keeps slipping. Maya's expression softened. You are not alone in that feeling, Ethan. We all break a little trying to survive. She laid her hand gently on the table close, but not touching him, just a silent offering of presence. And the simple closeness of it, the quiet reassurance, felt like the first clean breath he had taken in years. He wanted to reach out to take her hand to tell her the truth, but the lie he lived clung to him like a shadow refusing to let go. When he rose to leave, she walked him to the door. The street outside was cool and quiet, the harbor lights reflecting softly in the black water. Take care of yourself tonight, she said. Promise me you will try. He met her gaze. I promise. But as he walked toward his car, he knew he was lying again. Because the closer he grew to Maya, the more terrified he became of the moment she would discover the truth. And deep down he knew that when the truth finally broke through his carefully crafted lies, it would shatter more than the fragile trust between them. It would break something in him, too. The night it happened was not planned, not anticipated, and certainly not something either of them was prepared to feel. It began quietly with a cool breeze rolling off the harbor and the soft hum of streetlights casting a warm glow across the sidewalks as Ethan walked toward the diner just before closing time. He had not intended to go. He had told himself earlier that day he should put distance between them, that the lies growing between them were too fragile to risk another moment of closeness. But something about the silence of his apartment after he tucked Lucas into bed, something about the scattered homework on the kitchen table and the untouched coffee on the counter reminded him too much of the loneliness he carried. So he found himself outside the diner again, his hand hovering near the door handle as though the simple act of entering would expose everything he was trying to hide. When he stepped inside, he found Maya wiping down the counter, her hair tied back loosely with a pencil tucked behind her ear. She glanced up, surprise softening into something warmer. You came late tonight, she said. Could not sleep, he replied and slid into a booth. She put away her cleaning cloth and poured him a fresh cup of coffee, even though he had not asked. You should sleep more, she murmured, placing the cup in front of him. It is important. He lifted the mug and let the warmth seep into his fingers. You sound like someone who actually cares. Maybe I do, she said quietly. That simple sentence struck him harder than expected. He watched her for a moment, the way she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, the way her eyes softened with concern she never voiced too loudly. She sat across from him exhausted, but still somehow carrying that gentle steadiness he had come to crave. They talked about small things at first. Lucas's school project, the weather, the way the city smelled like salt and diesel at night. But slowly their conversation deepened as though something unseen pulled them closer with every sentence. Maya rested her chin on her hand. What were you like before life became heavy, Ethan? He blinked, startled by the question. Before what? Before you started carrying everything alone. He swallowed and stared into his coffee. I used to laugh more. I used to sleep. I used to believe people told the truth. Maya watched him quietly. And now, I do not know. He admitted, I have been lied to enough times that honesty feels like a risk. A soft sadness crossed her face. That sounds lonely. It is, he whispered. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The diner was silent now, except for the distant clatter from the kitchen where the cook was finishing up. Maya rose from the booth and motioned toward the front door. Come on, she said. I want to show you something. He followed her outside into the night. She led him a few steps down the sidewalk until they reached the edge of the harbor. The water reflected the glow of nearby streetlights, shimmering in dark gold ripples. This is my favorite place, she said, wrapping her arms around herself. When I feel like I am drowning in everything, I come here for a minute, just to breathe. Ethan stood beside her, hands in his pockets, listening to the soft sounds of the water brushing against the wooden dock. Why me? He asked quietly. Why are you showing me this? Maya looked at him, her expression open and unguarded, Because you look like someone who has not breathed in a long time." Her honesty cut straight through him. He wanted to tell her he had been holding his breath for years, ever since his marriage collapsed, ever since trust became a foreign language he could not speak. He wanted to tell her he felt more like himself around her than he had with anyone else. Instead, he said softly, "Thank you for this." She smiled faintly. "You can talk to me, you know. I do not expect anything from you." His breath trembled. "There are things I cannot explain yet, things that would change how you see me." Her gaze did not waver. "Then tell me when you are ready. I can wait." That was the moment something shifted between them. A doorway cracked open, a fragile invitation. They walked along the harbor in silence, shoulders almost brushing, but not quite touching the air between them, warm with something unnamed. When they reached a bench overlooking the water, Maya sat pulling her knees close beneath her. Ethan hesitated before sitting beside her, leaving just enough space to pretend distance, but not enough to break the connection. "Tell me about Lucas," she said. "What is he afraid of? Thunder?" Ethan answered. "And losing people?" Maya nodded slowly. "You are afraid of that too." He exhaled sharply. "You see too much. I do not see everything," she corrected gently. "But I see you." Those 3 words wrapped around him like a warm blanket he did not know he needed. Being seen had always felt threatening to him, but from her it felt like relief. They talked for nearly an hour under the dim streetlight. She told him about her mother, about Nina, about how she learned to be strong long before she ever wanted to be. He told her about the night his marriage broke, about the silence that followed, about the fear he carried that one day Lucas would look at him and see someone who failed. Maya reached out and touched his hand lightly, not fully holding it, but letting her fingers linger against his skin. Ethan did not move, not because he was afraid, but because the moment was so fragile he feared breaking it. "You are not failing," she whispered. "You are fighting. Hard. And that matters." He could have sworn his heart stopped. Slowly he turned his hand so his fingers brushed hers more fully. Their palms hovered warm and close, but not intertwined. It was the almost that made it electric, the almost that made his breath catch. They leaned in, slightly drawn by a pull neither of them fully understood. He could feel the warmth of her breath, the closeness of her body, the quiet promise in her eyes. But just before their lips touched, Maya drew back, breath trembling. Ethan froze, not out of rejection, but because her eyes held something raw and honest. "You are hiding something," she said softly. "I do not know what. I do not know if it is big or small, but I feel it, and I cannot let myself fall if I am falling alone." Her words were not an accusation, but a plea. A chance, a moment offering him a choice. Ethan swallowed his guilt. "I want to tell you. I do. But I am not ready." Her shoulders dropped slightly with something like sadness. "Then we wait," she whispered. That night they walked back to the diner without touching again, though their hearts still reached for each other in quiet, aching beats. It was the night they almost fell in love, and the night Ethan realized that almost would haunt him until the truth came out. For the next few days, Ethan lived with a kind of restless tension he could not shake the memory of that night by the harbor, replaying over and over in his mind like a quiet question he had not answered. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the way Maya had looked at him just before she pulled away, her voice shaking with a truth she did not want to speak. "You are hiding something." It echoed through him like a dull ache, and each time it did he felt the weight of his lie grow heavier. He had always believed he could control the lie, keep it small enough that it harmed no one. But now he realized it was expanding with every moment he let her into his life. It wrapped around him the way cold air wrapped around the harbor at dawn, unavoidable and impossible to ignore. On Thursday evening, he walked into the diner with his heart beating far too fast for a simple visit. Maya looked up from behind the counter, her expression brightening for a moment before softening with something more complicated. She did not avoid him, but she did not step toward him with the same ease she had before. It was subtle, a quiet shift in the air between them. Ethan noticed instantly. He sat in his usual booth and she approached him with a cautious smile. "Coffee?" she asked. Her tone was gentle but guarded, like she was protecting something fragile. "Yes, please," he said. She poured him a cup and set it down carefully, her fingers brushing the edge of the mug. He watched her closely. "You okay, Maya?" She nodded, but her eyes drifted away. "Long week. Things running tight at home." "Money, Maya?" he asked softly. She exhaled. "Money, stress, life. All of it." He wanted to help. He wanted to reach across the table and lift every burden off her shoulders. But his help would expose him. His truth was tied to his power, and his power was tied to his wealth, and once she saw all of that, she would realize just how much he had lied. So he said nothing. Not yet. She returned to work, and Ethan watched her move through the diner with the same quiet determination as always. But tonight, she paused every so often, looking at him with a question in her eyes she never spoke. And each time she did, he felt guilt pulse through him like a bruise being pressed. Around 9 o'clock, the television mounted in the corner of the diner flickered to life with the evening news. Ethan barely registered the voices at first, lost in thoughts he could not fully form. But then a name he knew too well cut through the low hum of conversations. Greenwave Logistics CEO Ethan Cole announces new regional expansion. His heart stopped. Slowly, terribly, he lifted his gaze to the TV. His photograph appeared on the screen. His real photograph. The polished press image his publicist insisted on using. Clean-shaved, sharp suit, confident posture. That version of him looked nothing like the man sitting in the diner booth pretending to be someone else. Maya was walking past with a tray of plates when she glanced at the screen. She did not react at first. The volume was low, and the image flashed quickly as the anchor moved on to another story. But she paused for a second too long, her eyes narrowing slightly as she turned back toward Ethan. He dropped his gaze to his coffee and grabbed the menu as if he could hide behind laminated plastic. Did she see it, no? Maybe. He was not sure. He forced his breathing to slow, but it felt like there was not enough air in the diner to fill his lungs. The lie was trembling now, cracking at the seams. Maya placed the tray down and walked back behind the counter, her movements slower than before. She did not look directly at him, but something had shifted. Again. Later that night, the diner was nearly empty when Maya approached his booth with a gentle but serious expression. "Can I ask you something, Ethan?" She said it quietly, as though unsure how heavy the question would be. His chest tightened. "You can always ask," he whispered. She slid into the booth across from him, folding her hands on the table. "You ever get the feeling someone is not being honest with you?" she asked carefully. Ethan felt his throat close. "What do you mean?" She met his eyes, and there was no anger there, only uncertainty. Only the quiet ache of someone who wanted to trust but was afraid of falling. "I do not know," she said softly. "I just feel like there is more going on with you than what you tell me. You say you do delivery work, but sometimes you talk like someone who answers to no one. You say you struggle, but you have this calm like someone who lived another kind of life before." She inhaled slowly. "It is like you carry a past you do not talk about." Ethan searched for words, but none came. She continued, her voice steady. "I am not asking for details. I just need to know if the person I am letting into my life is real." His heart thudded painfully. "Maya." "I am real," he whispered. She nodded. "But are you honest?" He opened his mouth, but a lump formed in his throat. Words would not come because the truth felt too sharp, too dangerous. Maya's eyes softened with hurt she was trying hard to hide. "I am not accusing you of anything," she said. "I'm just trying to understand why it feels like you are always holding back from me." Before he could respond, the diner door opened and Nina walked in wearing her backpack, her expression tense. Maya's attention snapped toward her sister instantly. "What are you doing here?" Maya asked, standing up. "You should be home." Nina looked flustered. I know. I just needed to talk to you. It is important." Maya led her to the counter, worry etched on her face. Ethan watched them whisper back and forth, guilt spreading through him as he saw how much pressure Maya carried in her small, tired frame. He wanted to be someone she could lean on, but he had become someone she had to doubt. When Nina sat at the counter picking at a sandwich Maya brought her, she glanced toward Ethan, then leaned close to her sister. "Maya, I told you he is not what he says he is. No one carries themselves like that unless they used to have money or still do." Maya stared at Nina, whispered words clearly shaken. Ethan's breath hitched painfully. Nina turned toward him again, her gaze sharp with suspicion. And Maya looked between her sister and Ethan, confusion and fear building in her eyes. The truth hovered between all of them like a storm ready to break. Ethan stood slowly, the chair scraping softly against the floor. "Maya," he said quietly, "let me explain." She looked at him and the ache in her eyes nearly destroyed him. "Not tonight," she whispered. "Please." She led Nina outside without looking back. Ethan stood alone in the empty diner, the TV still playing quietly above him, his photograph gone but the damage already rooted deep. Maya had begun to suspect. Nina had voiced what Maya was too gentle to say. And the truth he had tried so hard to bury, was now clawing its way to the surface. It was no longer a question of if Maya would find out. It was a question of when and how badly it would break her when she did. The morning of the accident began quietly, the kind of ordinary weekday that should have passed without consequence. But fate had a strange way of bending simple days into turning points. Ethan woke early, made breakfast for Lucas, packed his lunch, and walked him to school with the easy routine they had built together. Lucas held his backpack straps tightly, humming softly as he told Ethan about a science trivia contest his class was preparing for. Ethan listened, smiling at the excitement lighting his son's face, and for a moment he allowed himself to forget the mounting pressure of the lie that shadowed every interaction he had with Maya. But the memory of her eyes the night before lingered beneath the surface of his thoughts the way she had looked at him with worry and uncertainty. She wanted honesty. She deserved it. And he knew that delivering the truth might cost him the one connection that had made him feel alive again. As he dropped Lucas off, he knelt down and brushed a hand through his son's hair. "Be good today," he said gently. "Always?" Lucas replied with a grin. Ethan watched him run toward the school doors, small and determined, and felt a swell of love mixed with fear. He was trying so hard to protect Lucas from every hurt in the world, but in doing so he had created a different kind of wound. A lie hidden between the cracks of their growing connection with Maya. The day passed in restless fragments. Ethan tried to focus on work, but emails, blurred meetings felt hollow, and numbers on spreadsheets swam unfocused. He kept checking his phone, expecting a message from Maya, even though she had not reached out since the tense moment at the diner. His chest tightened each time he saw no new notifications. It felt like waiting for a storm. By early afternoon, he could not concentrate at all. He stepped outside his office building, the cold wind whipping off the water, and tried to steady himself. Maybe he could go to the diner tonight. Maybe he could explain before everything shattered. He reached for his phone again just as it buzzed. Unknown caller. His stomach dropped. He answered. "Mr. Cole." "This is Bayside Elementary," said a calm voice. "There was an incident during recess today involving your son. He is okay, but we need you to come to the hospital." The world tilted sharply. Hospital. That word hit him harder than any truth he feared revealing. "Is he hurt?" Ethan asked, his voice strained. "Is he conscious?" "Yes," the woman replied quickly. "It is mainly precaution. He slipped from the playground equipment and landed awkwardly. He complained of pain, so we sent him to be checked. Please come as soon as you can." Ethan was already running. Traffic blurred around him as he sprinted toward his car, gripping the steering wheel with trembling hands. His thoughts spiraled as he drove. Lucas, Maya, truth, fear. He pushed the accelerator harder, wishing the lights would turn green faster, wishing he could teleport to his son's side. At the hospital, he rushed through the automatic doors and announced himself at the front desk. The nurse pointed him toward a hallway where he found Lucas sitting on a hospital bed, swinging his legs anxiously. Relief flooded Ethan so quickly he almost collapsed. "Lucas, Dad," he called, his voice small but steady. I slipped. It hurt. Ethan knelt beside him, immediately checking his arms and legs with careful hands. "Where does it hurt?" he asked. "My wrist," Lucas said, lifting his arm slightly, "and my ankle a little. The doctor said it is not broken, just sore." Ethan exhaled deeply, letting the fear leave his body. He brushed his thumb gently over Lucas's forehead. "You scared me, buddy." "I know," Lucas whispered, looking down. "I am sorry." "You have nothing to be sorry for," Ethan assured him. The fear in him slowly softened into gratitude. His son was safe. A few scrapes, a strained wrist, maybe a sprain. Nothing more. Nothing life-altering. Nothing irreversible. As the doctor returned to explain the results, a familiar voice floated from the doorway, soft, concerned, and painfully unexpected. "Lucas, are you okay?" Maya stood there, still wearing her work apron, her hair pulled back, but her face betrayed how fast she must have come, the worry written clearly in her eyes. Ethan blinked, stunned. "Maya." "What are you doing here?" "Nina texted me," Maya said breathlessly. "She heard from a friend at the school. I came as soon as I could." Lucas brightened. "Maya, you came?" She hurried to his bedside, gently touching his shoulder. "Course I came. You helped me with your project, remember? I had to make sure you were okay." Ethan watched them, the connection between them undeniable, and his chest tightened with a complicated swirl of gratitude and dread. Maya had come without hesitation. She cared, truly cared, but she still did not know who he was. And the truth was about to slip out in the worst possible way. The doctor finished speaking, handing Ethan a packet of instructions. "Rest for a few days. Ice. Elevate the ankle. If pain worsens, come back. Thank you," Ethan said. When the doctor left, he turned to check on Lucas again. The nurse approached, holding paperwork. "And the bill," she said gently, "will be processed with your insurance." Insurance? Of course. A billionaire never hesitated. Without thinking, Ethan reached into his pocket and handed over his black card, the one he never used around Maya, the one that had his full name embossed in gold. The nurse's eyes widened slightly. Maya froze. The room stilled. Slowly, as though afraid to understand the truth, she looked at the card in the nurse's hand, then at Ethan's face. Her breath hitched. Ethan Cole. Her voice cracked. The same name from the TV. The same name from the news. Her eyes filled with disbelief. Hurt and something deeper, a quiet breaking he could almost hear. Ethan tried to speak Maya. "Wait." "No," she whispered, stepping back. "No." Lucas watched them silently, sensing the shift. Maya swallowed hard, her hands trembling. "You lied to me. Every day, in every conversation, every moment that mattered." "It was not like that," he said, his voice thick with panic. Maya shook her head, tears brimming but refusing to fall. "You said you struggled. You said you barely made it. You let me believe you were living the same life I was." Ethan reached out instinctively, but she stepped back again. The space between them felt like a wound. Maya's voice trembled. "I defended you to Nina. I told her she was wrong. I told her I could trust you." Ethan felt something inside him shatter. Lucas watched with wide eyes, scared by the tension he did not understand. Maya looked at the little boy and swallowed again, her voice barely a whisper. "Lucas, get better, okay? I am really glad you are safe." Then she turned and walked away without looking at Ethan again. Ethan choked on the silence she left behind. The truth had come out not through confession, not through courage, but through necessity. And in that moment, standing beside his son's hospital bed, watching the only woman he had cared about in years walk out the door, he realized something devastating. He had not just hurt Maya. He had broken something in himself, too. Ethan did not sleep the night after the accident, not even for a moment. He sat on the edge of his couch with the city lights trembling through the window, while Lucas slept in the next room with his ankle propped on pillows and an ice pack resting gently on the swollen skin. The apartment was quiet, but Ethan's mind was a storm. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Maya in the doorway of that hospital room, her expression collapsing in slow motion as the truth unraveled in front of her. He heard the crack in her voice when she whispered, "You lied to me," and the way she stepped back as if the space between them were suddenly dangerous. He felt the weight of every unspoken truth pressing against him like a wall closing in. He had not meant for her to find out like that. He had wanted to tell her himself. He had rehearsed it a dozen times. But fear made him slow, and life made the choice for him. And now he stood in the ruins of something he did not know how to fix. When morning finally broke, Lucas limped into the living room, rubbing his eyes. "Dad," he whispered, "are you okay?" Ethan forced a smile that did not reach his eyes. "I am fine, buddy." Lucas watched him carefully, sensing the lie the way children always do. "Are you going to talk to Maya?" he asked quietly. Ethan's breath caught. "I have to, but she is mad. She is hurt." Lucas nodded slowly. "Then you have to tell her the truth. All of it. She deserves that." Ethan placed a hand on the back of his son's head, pulling him gently against his side. "You are right." He waited until the nanny arrived, then drove to the diner, though his hands trembled on the steering wheel the whole way. He had faced investors, reporters, legal threats, and the collapse of his marriage, but none of those moments compared to the terror he felt now as he walked toward the glass door of that small diner. The bell chimed when he entered, and the familiar scent of coffee and grilled onions drifted through the air. Maya was wiping down a counter, her movements slow and stiff, as though she were bracing herself just to get through the shift. When she looked up and saw him, something inside her shuddered. She did not turn away, but she did not move toward him either. She simply stood still, her eyes steady but wounded. Ethan approached carefully, stopping a few feet from her. "Maya." "Please," he said quietly, "we need to talk." She did not speak right away. She took a deep breath, set the cloth aside, and nodded toward an empty booth. "Sit," she said. Her voice was calm, but the calm of someone holding back a tidal wave. Ethan sat across from her, his hands clasped tightly together. Maya sat with her spine straight and her eyes never leaving his. "I need to hear it," she said softly. "Everything. No excuses, no softening the truth. Just tell me who you are." Ethan swallowed hard. "My name is Ethan Cole. I own Greenwave Logistics. I built it from nothing. I have money more than I ever needed. I was married once. It ended badly. I lost trust in people, and I started testing the women I met to see if they were with me for the right reasons." Maya held his gaze, but her expression did not change. "And you tested me." Ethan closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the shame settle deep in his chest. "Yes, I should have told you. I should have stopped pretending. I should have trusted you." Maya inhaled sharply. "You did not test me to protect yourself," she said quietly. "You tested me because you assumed I was like them." Ethan opened his mouth to respond, but she lifted her hand, silencing him. "Let me speak." He nodded. Her voice trembled, not with anger, but with pain. "I work 2 jobs. I raise my sister. I deal with bills people with money never have to think about. I have spent years fighting for a life that keeps falling apart, and still I find ways to be kind to people, including you." She looked down at her hands for a moment, then back up at him. "And you looked at me and decided I was just another test, just another woman you needed to measure before trusting." Ethan felt something inside him collapse. Maya leaned forward slightly, her voice soft but sharp with truth. "I was not looking for a rich man or a perfect man. I was looking for someone honest, someone who did not hide behind a story, someone who did not make me feel like I needed to prove I was worthy of love." She shook her head slowly. "I let you in more than I let most people, and you were lying the whole time." Ethan's hands trembled. I know I hurt you. I hate myself for it. I care about you, Maya, so much." She blinked rapidly, fighting tears that refused to fall. "That is what makes it worse. I could have accepted your past or your money or your mistakes, but I cannot accept being tested like I am some kind of barrier you needed to check before letting yourself feel anything real." The sentence hit him harder than any shout could have. He leaned forward, voice barely steady. "Tell me what I can do. Anything. Just tell me how to fix this." Maya stared at him deeply long enough that Ethan felt every truth about himself reflected back. "You cannot fix it," she whispered. "Not by trying to give me something, not by using money or promises or apologies. You have to understand the damage first." Ethan's chest tightened. "I do." She shook her head. "No, you do not. Because if you did, you would not have kept lying even when you knew I was already starting to care." Silence stretched between them until Maya finally spoke again, her voice low and trembling. "You did not test them. You tested me. And you failed." The words sliced through him, leaving him breathless. But before he could respond, the diner door opened, and a couple stepped inside, breaking the fragile moment. Maya wiped her hands on her apron as if steadying herself. "I have to work," she said quietly. "Please leave." Ethan stood slowly, feeling as though the ground beneath him had shifted. He wanted to stay, wanted to plead, wanted to fight for the thing that had grown between them, but her expression made it clear this was not the moment to push. He nodded once. "I am sorry, Maya." She did not answer. She simply turned away and walked toward the couple with the same calm poise she always carried, but Ethan could see the faint tremble in her shoulders. He walked out of the diner with the door chiming behind him, feeling the weight of a truth he could no longer outrun. He had not only lost Maya's trust, he had proven himself unworthy of it, and, for the first time since he met her, he felt truly afraid not of being hurt, but of knowing he was the one who caused the hurt. Ethan spent the next 3 nights standing outside the diner like a man suspended between hope and despair, arriving before Maya's shift ended and remaining long after the last customer drifted into the night. He did not wait in his car, did not hide under the warm glow of privilege. He stood on the sidewalk in the cold hands tucked into the pockets of his worn jacket, the same jacket he had worn the first night he met her, but now it felt heavier, soaked with everything he wished he had done differently. People passed him without recognizing him. To them, he looked like any tired single father waiting for someone. That was exactly what he was now, no more, no less. On the first night, Maya stepped outside at nearly midnight, exhausted from the long shift. She saw him, instantly froze, but did not speak. Ethan lifted a hand in a small, hesitant wave. "Maya, please, just hear me," he said softly. She walked past him without a word, but he noticed her blink a little faster than normal, as though fighting something in her chest. On the second night, he returned again, this time with Lucas's small envelope in his coat pocket, the one his son had spent the whole afternoon writing, decorating with shaky drawings of stars, and a little cup of cocoa that was supposed to look like Maya's favorite drink. Ethan stood still, watching his breath fog in the air. When Maya stepped out, she paused a second longer than the night before, and her gaze flicked to the envelope peeking out of Ethan's pocket. "What is that?" she asked quietly. Ethan gently held it out. "Lucas made it for you." Maya hesitated, then accepted it with careful fingers, clutching it like it was fragile. She did not open it, not yet. She whispered a soft, "Thank him for me," then walked away before emotion betrayed her. By the third night, the cold had turned sharper. The wind from the harbor bit through Ethan's jacket, but he stayed rooted to the same spot, heart pounding as the hours stretched. He was not there to win her back with promises. He was not there to insist she owed him forgiveness. He was there to show up, without the lie, without the test, without the mask. When Maya finally exited the diner, the first thing she did was look for him, and that tiny instinctual gesture made his breath catch. She saw him and let out a slow, shaky sigh, something between frustration and relief. "You are still here," she said. Ethan nodded. "Yes. Why?" "Because I needed to learn how to stay," he murmured. Maya gripped her arms against the cold. "This is not fixing anything, Ethan. I know. Then why are you doing this? Because you deserve the truth long before I ever let you close. Because I hurt you. And because you matter to me." She swallowed, looking away. "You cannot erase what you did." Ethan stepped slightly closer, but not enough to crowd her. I am not trying to. I am trying to be the man I should have been from the moment I met you. The silence that followed was heavy, but not hostile. Maya looked down at the envelope still tucked in her apron pocket. Can I read it? She whispered, barely audible. Yes, he said. She opened it slowly and unfolded Lucas's letter. The handwriting was crooked, uneven, written with the earnestness only a child could manage. I am sorry. I lied, he wrote. Dad says lying hurts good people. You are a good person. I hope you are not mad at him forever. You make Dad smile. He does not smile much. Please come back. Maya pressed a hand to her mouth, trying to steady her breathing. The childlike honesty sank deep into her chest, breaking places she had tried to hold together. She blinked quickly. Lucas wrote this himself. Yes, Ethan whispered. I did not see it until he sealed it. He wanted to say sorry in his own words, and he wanted to say thank you for caring about him. Maya closed her eyes, the ache inside her shifting from anger to something softer, more complicated. Ethan spoke again gently. Maya, I know I do not deserve another chance. I know that. But I am asking for the chance to show you the kind of man I want to be, not the one I hid behind. The one who stands here, with nothing to test, nothing to prove. Just truth. She opened her eyes, meeting his. Her voice trembled. You cannot expect me to move on from this quickly. I do not. You cannot expect trust to magically return. I do not. Then, what do you want, Ethan? She whispered. One conversation. One moment where we talk without the lie between us. And after that, if you want to walk away, I will not stop you. Maya looked away toward the harbor where streetlights shimmered against the dark water. Everything about him still scared her, not because of who he was, but because of what she felt. She had trusted before. She had been let down before. She had survived disappointment after disappointment, and yet, here he was standing in the cold for 3 nights waiting, not demanding, not insisting, not bribing. Just staying. Maya let out a long breath, her shoulders sagging lightly. I will talk to you, she whispered, but not tonight. Ethan nodded immediate acceptance in his eyes. Whenever you are ready. Slowly, she stepped closer just enough for the space between them to shift. I need time, Ethan. I need to understand how to trust someone who broke it so deeply. His voice softened. I will wait as long as it takes. She studied him with eyes that searched for sincerity, and this time she saw no mask, no performance, no hidden tests. Just a man stripped of everything except the truth he was finally willing to carry. Maya nodded once, gripping Lucas's letter close to her chest. Good night, Ethan. Good night, Maya. She walked away into the night, clutching the letter like a fragile promise, while Ethan remained on the cold sidewalk, heartsick but hopeful for the first time since everything shattered. Because she had not said goodbye. She had said goodnight. For 3 days, Maya kept her distance, not out of anger, but because she needed space to breathe and to understand the weight of everything she felt. She worked double shifts at the diner. She took Nina to school. She paid bills. She tried to maintain her busy routine, but every quiet moment was interrupted by one image, Ethan standing in the cold, waiting. She hated that it meant something. She hated that she cared. And yet, every night before bed, she took out Lucas's letter, reading it slowly, tracing each uneven word written by a child who had learned honesty the hard way. You make Dad smile. He does not smile much. The line softened her heart in ways she did not expect because she remembered how Ethan looked the first night she met him. Tired, lost, carrying more pain than he admitted. She remembered the way he listened when she spoke, the way he looked at his son, the way kindness seemed to flicker in him like a light he was afraid to let shine. He lied, yes, but he also cared. Truly cared. And love was never simple, never clean, never without risk. On the 4th night, Maya made a decision that felt both terrifying and necessary. She asked Nina if she would be okay for a few hours. Nina nodded immediately. Go, she said quietly. You need to. Maya pulled on her coat, wrapped her scarf tightly, and walked through the chilly evening toward the harbor where the city lights reflected on the dark water like scattered stars. She texted Ethan only 2 words. "Meet me." Ethan saw the message while putting Lucas to bed, and his breath caught. He kissed his son's forehead, whispered goodnight, then ran a hand through his hair trying to steady the nerves shaking through him. He grabbed his jacket and hurried out the door, heart pounding. He found Maya standing by the railing overlooking the water, her hair gently lifted by the breeze, her shoulders tense, her fingers gripping the railing as though bracing for a storm. Ethan approached slowly, stopping a few feet behind her. "Maya," he said softly. She did not turn immediately. She closed her eyes, breathing in the cold air before speaking. "I needed to see if you would actually come. I would come anywhere you asked," he said without hesitation. She finally turned to face him, and he saw a mixture of sadness, strength, and vulnerability. "You asked for one conversation without lies," she said. "So here it is." Ethan nodded, absorbing every word. "I am here." Maya exhaled long and slow. "Ethan, I am tired. I am tired of people pretending to be something they are not. I am tired of fighting my way through life while the world keeps taking things from me. My mom, my dad, my stability, my sense of safety." She paused. "And when I meet someone who feels like a break in that storm, someone who feels gentle and honest and real, I want to believe in it." Her voice cracked slightly. "But you were not honest." Ethan felt the ache in her words settle deep into his chest. "You are right, I was not." Maya tightened her arms around herself. "You hurt me, Ethan. Not because you're rich, not because you have a life I will never understand, but because you looked at me, someone who has had everything taken from her, and decided I was another test, another barrier you had to check before caring." Ethan stepped forward just enough to make sure she could walk away if she needed to. "I know, and I will regret that for the rest of my life." She searched his face, studying the honesty in his eyes. "Why, Ethan? Why did you keep lying even after you started caring about me?" He swallowed hard. "Because I was scared. Scared that if you knew the real me, you would leave. Scared that I was not enough without the lie. Scared that I would lose something before I even understood how much it mattered." Maya looked down at the ground, tears glimmering at the corner of her eyes. She wiped them away quickly. "I never asked you for perfection. I never asked you for money. I asked you to be honest." Ethan whispered, "I know." Maya held his gaze again, her voice softer. "So what now? Ethan, what happens after everything that broke between us?" Ethan took a breath, steadying himself. "What happens now is whatever you choose. I am not going to push you or beg you or use words to convince you. I am going to show up, with honesty, every day. If that means we rebuild slowly, then we rebuild slowly. If that means you walk away, I will accept it, even if it breaks me." Maya felt her chest squeeze painfully. "You would really let me go?" He nodded, voice shaking. "If that is what you choose. Because love is not control, and it is not fear, and it is not a test. It is a choice, and I cannot ask for yours unless I give you mine freely." She stared at him, and for the first time she saw a man stripped of ego, stripped of defense, stripped of everything except sincerity. Ethan took a small step closer. "Maya, I choose you, not the version of you I imagined, not the version of you I tested. I choose you exactly as you are, tired, brave, stubborn, kind, and honest." He breathed in shakily. "Now I am asking one thing, not forgiveness, not love, just this. Choose what matters to you. Choose what feels right for your heart." Maya's eyes filled again, but her tears were silent, steady, reflecting the glow of the city lights. "I do not know if I am ready," she whispered. "You do not need to be ready. You just need to be honest." She closed her eyes, letting truth settle in her chest like a fragile blossom. When she opened them, she took a single step forward until their faces were only inches apart. "The choice I make," she whispered, trembling, "is this. I will not walk away. Not yet, but I need to rebuild trust, and I need to do it slowly. Ethan exhaled a breath he had held for days. Anything. Anything you need. Maya looked at him deeply. Then promise me one thing. No more lies, no more tests, no more pretending. Ethan nodded with certainty. You have my word. She reached out gently, her fingers brushing his hand. It was not a romantic gesture, not a declaration, not a reunion. It was a beginning, a fragile, honest beginning, and for both of them it was enough. A full year passed before either of them realized how much had changed, not in a sudden way, not in dramatic leaps, but in quiet, steady steps that built something stronger than the broken truth they once stood in. The diner became the center of it all, not just a place of work or a place where two people first crossed paths, but a place where healing lived in every corner. Maya stood outside the diner on a warm spring morning, looking up at the newly painted sign, her chest swelling with pride. She had spent months applying for grants, researching community programs, and learning from teachers in the neighborhood, until finally she created something she had always dreamed of: a small learning corner inside the diner where local kids could get help with homework, receive free meals, and feel safe. There were shelves of donated books, bright posters about science and math, and a collection of notebooks waiting for new hands to pick them up. She opened the diner every day at sunrise, and students trickled in after school, filling the atmosphere with chatter and laughter. Maya did not feel tired anymore. She felt whole. Behind her, Ethan locked his car and walked over with Lucas, who now wore a freshly decorated cast from a different small injury kids were always getting themselves into. But this time, he wore it with pride because Maya had signed her name in bright blue ink. Lucas ran ahead, pushing the diner door open. "Maya, I am here," he called. Maya smiled, warmth spreading through her chest. "You are early today," she teased. "I have math homework," Lucas announced, "and you explain fractions better than my teacher." Ethan chuckled as he approached, standing just behind his son. He hesitated, the same warm, careful distance he had kept for months, giving Maya space but showing up every day. Ethan offered a soft good morning. Maya felt the familiar flutter of emotion, the same one that had bloomed slowly over the months as trust rebuilt itself piece by piece. "Good morning," she replied. He watched as Lucas sat at the learning corner pulling out his homework. It had become their routine. Ethan stayed near, but not overbearing, letting Maya guide the pace of everything. In the early months they had met for short walks by the harbor, long conversations on park benches, and simple moments that carried more meaning than grand gestures ever could. Ethan shared truths he had locked away, truths about his fears about his marriage, about why he had become a man who tested others instead of trusting them. Maya listened sometimes with silence, sometimes with gentle questions, and little by little he changed, not because he wanted to impress her, but because he wanted to grow into someone who no longer hid behind fear. Their bond deepened in ways that felt careful and honest. Now they stood in the diner, breathing in the warm smell of coffee and toasted bread, and Maya felt something shift inside her like a door quietly unlocking. Ethan noticed. His voice softened. "Anything I can help with today?" She looked at him briefly, then nodded. "You can help restock the books." He smiled, slightly relieved by the normalcy. "You got it." As he moved toward the shelf, Nina entered the diner, holding a stack of colored pencils. She froze slightly upon seeing Ethan, but her expression quickly softened. Over the months, her skepticism had faded, replaced by something like acceptance. "Morning, Ethan," she said. "Morning, Nina," he replied with sincere warmth. Nina walked over to Maya, leaning close. "You like him," she whispered. Maya nudged her sister gently. "Be quiet." Nina grinned. "I'm just saying he is different from before." Maya followed her sister's gaze and saw Ethan kneeling beside Lucas, helping arrange books with gentle patience. Maya's heart softened. Yes, he is different, and so was she. The diner slowly filled with students and regulars. Maya moved between tables with ease, refilling drinks, explaining homework problems, laughing at small jokes, and occasionally stealing glances at Ethan, whose presence seemed to anchor the room. Around noon, when the rush quieted, Maya wiped her hands on her apron and approached Ethan, who was sitting at a booth reviewing upcoming community programs she had planned. She sat across from him, pressing her palms together nervously. Ethan looked up, eyes warm and steady. "Everything okay?" Maya took a breath. "I want to talk to you about something." He nodded patiently. "Go ahead." She hesitated, searching for the right words. This diner was always my mother's dream, a place that felt like home, a place that stayed. When she passed, I tried to keep it going, but I was drowning. She glanced around the room at the small group of students laughing quietly in the corner. But now it feels alive again, and somehow you and Lucas became part of that. Ethan listened intently, saying nothing that would push or rush her. Maya continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "I know we did not start right. I know I needed time, but I think I am finally ready to choose something." Ethan's breath stilled. "What are you choosing?" Maya looked at him with a softness that carried every lesson they had learned. "I choose this." She gestured around the diner, then rested her gaze on him. "I choose honesty. I choose slow. I choose what we have built instead of what broke us." Ethan's expression shifted with emotion, something deep and quiet cracking open inside him. "Maya," he whispered. She reached across the table, taking his hand gently. "No promises, no perfect fairy tales, just us, and truth. If you want that." Ethan let out a shaky breath, the tension leaving his shoulders. "I want that more than anything." Their fingers intertwined naturally, without fear, without masks, without pretending. Lucas spotted them from the learning corner and smiled widely. "Are you two going to be together now?" he asked loudly. Maya flushed, and Ethan laughed softly, rubbing the back of his neck. "Something like that, buddy," Ethan replied. "Something honest," Maya added. The day continued with a lightness that wrapped around all three of them. By evening, as the sun dipped over the harbor, painting the sky in shades of gold, Maya stood outside the diner, locking the door. Ethan and Lucas waited beside her. The wind carried the scent of the ocean, and, for the first time in years, Maya felt peace, not borrowed peace, not fragile peace, but something earned and steady. Ethan stepped beside her, voice soft. "Maya?" "Yes," she answered. "Can I walk you and Nina home?" he asked carefully. She nodded, smiling. "I would like that." The three of them walked together down the quiet street, forming the shape of something new, something chosen. And as the lights flickered across the harbor, Maya glanced at Ethan and whispered more to herself than to him. "This time it stays." Because love was not a test. Love was the choice to show up, and that was exactly what they had done. If you made it all the way to the end of this story, then you already know this is not just a love story about a billionaire and a waitress. It is a story about honesty, the kind that hurts, the kind that heals, and the kind that teaches us who we truly are when everything else falls away. And now I want to ask you something directly right here in this moment, because stories only come alive when the people who read them bring their own heart into the final message. If someone tested your honesty without telling you, would you walk away, or would you stay long enough to understand why they were afraid in the first place? Would you forgive? Would you trust again? Or would the betrayal be too much for you to carry? I want to hear your thoughts truly. Every one of you who watches these stories, whether from a small town in the United States, from a busy city in Europe, from an island in the Philippines, or from anywhere in the world, you all bring life to this channel. Your comments teach me what love means to you, what hope means to you, and what healing looks like when it is put into words. So, please tell me how this story made you feel. Did Maya make the right choice? Did Ethan earn the slow, careful chance she gave him? Would you have stayed outside the diner for 3 nights if it were you fighting for someone you hurt? Or would you have walked away believing you did not deserve another chance at all? Your voice matters because every story I write comes from a place of wanting to understand people, of wanting to build a world where kindness still wins, even when everything feels broken. So, if you felt anything, pain, anger, hope, forgiveness, a spark of something gentle, I want to hear it in the comments. And if you want more stories like this filled with slow healing, quiet romance, emotional undulation, and characters who choose truth over fear, then please make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. It helps the channel more than you know, and it tells me that these stories matter to you enough to bring you back again. If you are already part of this community, thank you. Truly. So many of you comment with your cities, your countries, your thoughts, your memories. Every time I see a message like, Emma, I am watching from Texas, or Emma, I am here in London, or Emma, we love your stories from Trinidad. It reminds me that no matter where we live, we all feel heartbreak and hope in the same way. So please keep sharing. Keep talking to me. Keep telling me where you are watching from. And if you know someone who loves stories like this, someone who believes in second chances, someone who needs a reminder that love is not about being perfect, but about being honest, share this video with them. Let them feel something too. And lastly, I want to leave you with one quiet thought before you go. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is tell the truth even when your voice shakes. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is forgive someone who is trying to change. And sometimes the strongest love comes from choosing each other every single day, even after the storm has passed. Thank you for spending your time with me, for letting me tell you a story that came from the heart, and for being part of this little corner of the internet where we believe that love grows best when we stop running and start showing up. I will see you in the next story. Until then, be safe, be kind, and keep your heart open.